Hi lovelies, welcome back to my channel. My name is Fola. If you are new here, thank you for stopping by. Please subscribe to my channel, like and share my videos. And if you are a returning subscriber, thank you for always coming back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to make this beautiful crop jacket. It's a shawl collar jacket with ruffle sleeves. The ruffle sleeve is attached along the dart line. It is a very detailed video and I know it's something you'd like to know more about. So let's get right into the video. So I'll be drafting out the back pattern first. I have my line there already, so I'm just going to label my lines. I have the shoulder line, the chest line, and the length of the top, which is the waistline. And I added 1 inch hemming allowance to the length. I placed half of the shoulder measurements on the shoulder line and on the chest line, and I connected the point with a straight line. So I have my center back here. All my measurements will be starting from that point. On the shoulder line, I placed the neck width, which is 3.5 inches, and the neck depth is 1 inch for the back. And I connected the point with a curve. Then I came down by 1 inch from the shoulder line, and I connected to the neck width to form my shoulder slope. Then I get the midpoint of what I have there, and I came in by 0.5 inch. Then I placed 1/4 of the bust circumference plus 1 inch for ease on the chest line. Then I connected the point together to form my armhole. On the waistline, I placed 1/4 of the waist circumference plus 1 inch for dart intake. Then I connected that to the chest line. I placed half of the nipple to nipple measurements on the waistline and on the chest line. Then I connected that with a straight line. Then I placed 1/2 inch on both sides of the line. Then I connected that to the chest line. Then I got the midpoint of what I have on the shoulder slope, and I connected that to the chest line. So that will be all for the back pattern. I'm going to cut out now. So I have the center back and the side back. So we'll move to the front pattern now. To draft out the front pattern, what I'll do is to place the back pattern on a fresh paper, and I'll make sure I have enough allowance at the top and at the center here. I'm going to pin the back pattern to the front, and I'll trace out what I have here on the new paper. So this is what I have for the front. You can see I traced the exact thing I have on the back up to the front. The only difference here is the neckline depth. The depth of the neckline is 3 inches. And the front dart will be starting 2 inches below the chest line. Then I connected the points like that. Then I got the midpoints of what I have on the shoulder slope, just like we did for the back pattern. And I connected it to where the dart is starting from, just like that. Then the next thing I did was to mark the break point. The break point is where the button will be starting from. This totally depends on you, on how much cleavage you wish to show. But for mine, I came down 1 inch below the chest line. Then on that point, I came out from the center front by 1 inch. I did the same thing on the waistline. I came out by 1 inch from the center back, just like that. And I connected that with a straight line. So that would be my button allowance. Then the next thing I did was to connect my break point to the neck width with a slanted line, just like you see me doing. You connect the break point to the neck width. Then the next thing I did was to measure what I have on my back neckline. When I measured mine, I have 3.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is to extend that point by the 3.5 inches I measured for my back neckline. I'm going to extend it starting from the shoulder line like that. I marked 3.5 inches and I made sure it followed the slanted line. Then I came out by 0.5 inch from that point. The reason why we are doing this is to make the collar sit perfectly on the neckline. Then I'm going to connect that point back to the neck width. So that will be the new neckline. The next thing I'm going to mark now is the width of the collar. The width of the collar here is 3.5 inches. So I'm going to place the square part of my ruler on the new neckline, just like that. And I mark the width of my collar, which is 3.5 inches. Then I'm going to rule that out. You can also make use of your tape measure. All you have to do is to make sure the line is slanted like that. The next thing I did was to determine the shape of my collar. So what I did was to come down more like that, and I marked the 3.5 inches, which is the width of my collar, just like that. Then for that point, I connected that with a straight line to the collar there. Then I'm going to complete the collar with the curved part of my ruler, just like that. See the way I placed my ruler? Then I connected that with a curve, just like that. And I went ahead to smoothing that point so as to avoid sharp edges around there. And that is all. So that will be all for the front pattern. So this is the center front and the side front. I'll go ahead to cut that out. Then I take out the darts and I divide the center line. I cut out the center line like that. I'll do the same thing to the back pattern also. I'll cut out my darts and I'll cut out the center line also to have two separate pieces. So that will be all for the drafting process. I'll go ahead to cut out my pattern on fabric. My pattern has been transferred to the fabric here, as you can see, and I added the necessary seam allowance. On the center front, I added 1/2 inch allowance along the collar line, the dart line, and the shoulder line. I just added 1/2 inch allowance round the pattern, aside the hemming allowance, because I already have that on my pattern paper. And I cut 4 pieces for my center front. 2 will be serving as the lining, and the other 2 will be serving as the main fabric. I used a different fabric for the lining piece. That is the flowery crepe you are seeing there. That will be for my lining piece. If you want, you can make use of the same fabric for both the lining and the fabric. And I added interfacing to all the 4 pieces of my collar. And for the side front, I added 1/2 inch allowance round my pattern, aside the side seam, which is 1 inch. I added 1 inch to the side seam for my side seam allowance. Then for the back pattern, the center back was cut on fold. I cut my center back on fold and I added 1/2 inch allowance round the pattern. My lining piece was cut also the same way. And for the side back, I added 1/2 inch allowance round the pattern, aside the side seam, which is 1 inch. I added 1 inch side seam allowance, and I also cut out my lining piece also. So we'll start joining our pieces together now. Assuming we won't be having the ruffles on the dart line, the normal way to join these pieces together is to join the dart line first before joining the shoulder. But for this, we are going to be joining both the side front and the side back at the shoulder line first. So we are going to remove the pattern paper and we are going to join the side front and the side back at the shoulder points. Going to place them right side facing each other. We'll set the lining aside and work on the main fabric. Then we'll place them right side facing each other like that. And we are going to stitch it on the shoulder point with 1/2 inch like that. So this is what I have after joining the shoulder points. Then the next thing I'll do now is to measure what I want for my ruffles. So I want the ruffles to start 2 inches above the waistline, like that. 1 inch is for the hemming allowance. So ideally, it's starting 1 inch above the waistline, and it's going to stop the same 2 inches above the waistline. So it's going to start from that point and it will end at that point. So what I'll do is to measure from that point to the other point. So when I measured mine, I have about 31 inches. So what I'm going to do is to multiply what I have there by 2 or by 2.5, depending on how full you want your ruffles to be. So I just made use of what I have left here. The width is about 70 inches and the length is about 6 inches. I cut out 2 pieces for both sleeves. And I also went ahead to hem one side of the ruffle, as you can see. So after hemming, the total length I have here is about 5 inches. So I have 5 inches for the length of my ruffles after hemming the down part. So I'm going to curve the end part of my ruffles. So to achieve that, what I did was to fold the fabric into 2 equal halves, and at the end there, I'm going to just give it a slight curve there. So I just placed my curved ruler like that, and I'm just going to make a curve there, just like that. You can also just use your free hand to make a curve there, and I'm going to cut that out. So what I'm going to do is to run a gathers from one end of the sleeve to the other end, and I'll gather it to fit in what I have there. I'll gather it back to the 31 inches. So this is what I have after gathering my ruffle. So what I'm going to do is to place the ruffles on my bodies, starting from the mark, the 2 inches mark. I'm going to place it like that. The wrong side of the ruffles is facing the right side of the main fabric, like that. I'm going to pin down my ruffles to the main fabric like that. I'm going to pin it down, and I'll be stitching that with my 1/2 inch allowance. So this is what I have after stitching down my ruffles to the main bodies. I've done that to the other side also. I'm going to set this aside and I'll work on the other parts. So for my center front now, I'm going to remove my pattern paper and I'll join the collar width there, fabric to fabric. I'll join that with 1/2 inch allowance, and the lining piece also, I'll join them with 1/2 inch allowance. So this is what I have after joining the collar width. The next thing I'll do now is to join the neckline of the center back to the neckline of the front. So I notched my neckline at the center point like that. So I'm going to match the center back to the center front at the neckline like that. I'll match the center point. What I'm doing here is to pin down the neckline to the front neckline. I'm pinning down the back neckline to the front neckline. And I'm going to stitch that up with 1/2 inch allowance. I'm going to stitch my neckline with 1/2 inch, after which I'm going to stitch the shoulder with 1/2 inch. So this is what I have after stitching the neckline. I'm just going to make notch at that point, at the point where the neckline stopped. I'm not going to make notches around my neckline so it can lay flat when I turn to the right side. Then I'm going to complete that point with my... So I'm going to go ahead and stitch the shoulder point like that. I'm going to stitch that with 1/2 inch, as you can see. I'll do that to the other side. I'll stitch that with 1/2 inch. So this is what I have after stitching the shoulder points, as you can see. So I'm going to bring in the side piece now. I'm going to join the side piece to the center piece. So I'm going to place right side of my side piece facing right side of the center piece, and I'm going to match them at the shoulder points so that everything can align. I'm going to pin them at the shoulder points, and I'm just going to follow the ruffle line that I have there, the stitch that I have there. I'm going to follow that stitch, and I'm going to stitch with 1/2 inch allowance. And I'm going to do the same thing to the second side also. So this is what I have after stitching up my center piece to the side piece. So this is how it looks like. Then the next thing I'll do is to join my side seam. So I'll place them right side facing each other, and I'm going to join the sides with 1 inch side seam allowance. I'll do that to the second side. I'll stitch up with 1 inch side seam allowance. So this is what I have after stitching up the sides, and I also went ahead to iron my seam open, and I trimmed off the allowance I have on my ruffles so it won't be bulky. So everything I did to the main fabric, I also did to the lining pieces. I went ahead to join all my pieces together, and I added interfacing to the wrong side of my lining so it can give it some form of stability. And I also reduced the length of my lining piece by 1 inch. I reduced the length by 1 inch, so when I join to the main fabric, the lining will not be sticking out of the fabric. So I'm going to place right side of my lining piece facing the right side of the fabric, and I'm going to stitch it at the down part with 1/2 inch allowance. So I'm going to match all the seam lines with my pins so everything can align, and I will stitch the down part with 1/2 inch. So this is what I have after stitching the down parts. So I'm going to arrange my ruffles in between the fabric and the lining like that. I'm going to match the same line that I have there. So I'm going to pull up the lining piece like this with 1/2 inch. I'll start stitching from that point, and I'll stitch my collar all around. So I'm going to use my pins to hold down my fabric and lining together, and I'm going to stitch with 1/2 inch allowance. So this is what I have after stitching my collar. So I'm going to make notches round the collar so it can lay flat when I turn to the right side. Then I'm going to turn the jacket to the right side through the armhole. So this is it. After turning, I'm just going to bring out all the edges, and I'm going to arrange this properly, and I'll give it a good press. So this is how it looks on the right side. You can see how neat everything is looking like. So I'm going to give it a very good press so everything can lay flat and nice. And the last thing we are going to do is to finish up the armhole with our bias tape. So I'm going to finish up the armhole with the bias tape, and that will be all for this top. So this is what I have after ironing. You can see how nice it's looking like. The buttons will be fixed on the left side of the jacket, while the buttonhole will be fixed on the right side. And I also went ahead to finish up my armhole with the bias tape. You can see how neat it's looking on the wrong side and the right side. Everything is looking all nice. So we have come to the end of today's tutorial. I hope this video was helpful to you. And if there is any part you don't understand, you can always leave a comment in the comment section. If you are yet to subscribe to my channel, please kindly hit on the subscribe button now and put on your notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.